guests with us here. Owen's also here on a busy morning for business. We'll explain who the guest is exactly in a minute. First of all, though, Owen, also Olympus and the Asian markets making the business news today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was D-Day very much for Olympus, Stuart. Today was the day that it had to file its accounts in the wake of that huge scandal, one of the biggest corporate scandals in Japan over false accounting. The markets have been pretty jittery, and I think that reflects a lot of investor sentiment in Japan. The Nikkei did manage to recover some of its losses just towards the end of the trading session. It has closed, it's nevertheless down around 0.5%. But you can see the Hang Seng in Hong Kong still going, has managed to find some gains back into the green, around 0.1% up. Just to give you a few more details on Olympus, we understand, or it has been confirmed in fact, that Olympus has now filed its accounts with regulators. Of course, they will be looking through those accounts as they investigate those alleged $1.7 billion losses in alleged false accounting, covering up a series of misjudged acquisitions dating back to the 1990s. Why do we care? Well, the shareholders certainly care because there's concern that this company has seen its share price collapse as a result of this scandal. There's lots of concern that not only will Olympus have to raise fresh equity to stay afloat, it could still be delisted from the Tokyo Stock Exchange if regulators find that there has indeed been criminal activity. Waiting in the wings, like in any great drama, is the former chief executive, Michael Woodford. He was sacked for blowing the whistle on this whole scandal. He's now softening up many investors for a potential takeover. So expect to see him mounting some kind of bid in the weeks and months to come.
Intriguing story, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, let's leave that alone. We're going to go to the most open and closed markets in the world, and a first here on France 24. The International Chamber of Commerce has drawn up a new list of the most open and closed markets in the world in terms of trade access. It isn't officially released until Friday, but I'm very pleased to say that Jean-Guy Carrier, the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, who compiled this survey, joins us on the set. Many thanks indeed for coming in, Jean-Guy. Let's just take a look at some of these countries in your table, the best countries in terms of access. At the top, Hong Kong. Second, Singapore. Now, I have to say, neither of those places surprise me much. It's very easy to set up a business, certainly in places like Singapore, I think just a matter of days. Yes. But if we look on our table there, you've got countries like the UK, Germany, and indeed the US, not even anywhere near the top 10 in terms of open access. Is that a surprise to you to see these countries perhaps not quite the best in the world for open market access?
Let's say it's not a surprise. It's what we're measuring is reality as we have it now, but it's not been a change significantly over the last few years. I think what we're trying to do as well, just stepping back a moment, is to convince people, and it takes some work to do that, and politicians especially, that we're living in a globalized economy. That we are not able to sort of have national sovereignty over all aspects of our economy, because simply we're connected inextricably with other countries. I mean, France is the 5th largest exporter in the world, living in the European Union, which is the single biggest trading bloc in the world. And the notion that you can somehow step back and deal with policies that don't affect everyone right across the world is simply a fallacy. And what we're seeing with our business community, whether it's in India or in Turkey or in China, is that they feel quite on a daily basis the perturbations that are happening in Europe and the lack of decision and the lack of confidence that sends through the world economy. So what we've tried to do is basically put together this index, in a sense to quantify and to try and have an objective measure of openness that we can publish year on year and basically have a monitoring mechanism, if you want, that's credible about what countries are doing in terms of responding economically and in trade to the world events.
What sort of, when we talk about openness, Jean-Guy, give us some examples of what you consider to be open, a country that is particularly open like Hong Kong and Singapore. What do they do differently?
Well, they have basically very low tariffs on importations, very low conditions in terms of the imports from Europe, from France, from other parts of the world, and on average much lower than in other countries. In other words, they not only adhere to their commitments under the WTO agreements, Euro-Ground agreements, but they usually go better than that. And whereas many countries, and European countries being among the average, if you want, basically respect only what they committed to and don't make an extra effort to favor importations. The same thing happens because this index measures not only openness to trade, but openness to investment. And again, having a sound banking system that is transparent and all the rest of it, it works in your favor. Having, for instance, in terms of merchandise imports and so forth, having a good, effective customs system that doesn't stop a truck for 2 days or 8 hours at a border, all of that sort of also has a repercussion in terms of cost and friendliness to trade. So the index basically takes a broad statistical basis taken from UNCTAD, from the World Bank, from IMF, brings it together and gives us this snapshot of the situation as it is now.
Can't it cause problems further down the line, though? Because presumably if there's less regulation, there's less authorities kind of poking their nose in, if you like, then that can mean that as the company does get going, perhaps they haven't got the support they're needed.
Well, I think regulation is a good thing, and business wants regulation. That's what the WTO system is about. I mean, you've got 30,000 pages of agreements under the Uruguay round that govern all aspects of goods, service, and other trade. So that's good. I mean, business wants to know what the rules are. What is most unsettling, and you can see it now coursing through the global economy, is when you've got uncertainty. And so when business people in various parts of the world, in Argentina, Brazil, elsewhere, are looking at what's happening in Europe, it's not the lack of decision that's a problem. It's just the uncertainty about where everything is going. And when that happens, people pull back. People pull back on investment. Companies begin to be very conservative.
You mentioned Doha, Jean-Guy. Mentioned Doha, and the word protectionism inevitably crops up, and yet this is a pretty bad time right now. We've just seen the UK say no to any sort of closer integration in terms of tax and budgets. I mean, that essentially is being interpreted as a very protectionist move to protect the City of London. Are we really in the wrong kind of climate right now to be talking about free trade? Is it simply too difficult to stop countries doing their own thing?
I'd say that doing your own thing is futile. I mean, we've seen it. You come out of the last weekend discussions between European countries, and the euro is down for the second consecutive day. I mean, the world is giving an opinion about what's happening, and the opinion is a lack of confidence. And that, again, has a repercussion across all economies. On the trade front, the fact that there is a terminal blockage of the Doha round is another sign of despondency. I mean, it is a bad signal for the world economy, for Europe and for other parts of the world economy. If there were some hope of even salvaging parts of what's been negotiated for the last 10 years, that would be a glimmer of hope. And you'd see that basically having a positive effect in terms of business attitudes around the world.
Just very briefly, are you hopeful, or do you think it's too difficult right now to try and find some sort of meaningful agreement?
We're going to push very hard as an organization. We're mobilizing business. We think that over the next few months, over the next year, that events, in fact, are going to go in the right direction. Unfortunately, with bad consequences, because I don't think the economic situation is going to get better very quickly. And there's going to be increasing pressure on politicians to have recourse to trade as a no-cost stimulus to the world economy.
Going to have to interrupt you, aren't we? So thank you very much for coming in. That's Jean-Guy Carrier from the International Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for coming in and revealing all that to us today here on France 24. Owen, thanks to you as well. We've got some other things coming up now. We better move on and tell you that Just Why, the